Most people throw away $40 worth of food every single week. That is over $2,000 a year straight into the trash. But walk into any traditional Chinese household and you will find freezers that are packed to the brim. Nothing wasted, nothing forgotten, and meals ready to go at a moment's notice. There is a whole philosophy behind how Chinese families manage food preservation that the Western world has barely scratched the surface of, and today we are counting down 17 freezer habits that will completely change the way you think about your kitchen. These are not vague tips like just freeze your leftovers. These are specific, actionable techniques passed down through generations of home cooks who had to make every ingredient count. Number 17. Freeze your ginger as a whole, unpeeled knob. Most Americans peel their ginger, chop a little bit off, and then wrap the rest in plastic wrap where it slowly shrivels and turns into a sad, dried-out nub within a week. Chinese home cooks do something completely different. They take the entire ginger root, dirt and all if it still has it, and they throw it straight into a Ziploc bag and into the freezer. When you need ginger, you pull it out and you grate it directly from frozen. Here is why this works so well. Frozen ginger grates almost effortlessly compared to fresh ginger. The fibers break down when frozen, so you get this beautiful fine ginger paste from a simple box grater in about 10 seconds. The skin comes off naturally as you grate, so you never even need to peel it. Ginger stored this way lasts 6 months or more with zero quality loss. Buy a big bag from the Asian grocery store, freeze the whole thing, and your ginger situation is solved for half a year. Number 16. Portion and freeze tofu in seasoned blocks. Tofu intimidates a lot of American home cooks, and part of the reason is that fresh tofu goes bad so fast. You buy a block, use half, and 3 days later the rest has turned sour. Chinese families solve this by pressing firm tofu, cutting it into the portion sizes they actually use, and freezing it. But here's the clever part. Many cooks will lightly salt the tofu pieces or marinate them briefly in soy sauce before freezing. When tofu freezes and then thaws, the water inside it expands and creates these tiny air pockets throughout the block. That spongy, porous texture is actually a feature, not a bug. It absorbs marinades and sauces dramatically better than fresh tofu ever could. Freeze your tofu pressed and portioned, and when you pull it out and thaw it, it will soak up whatever braising liquid or stir-fry sauce you put it in like a sponge. This is how Chinese braised tofu gets that incredible depth of flavor that just does not happen with fresh. Number 15. The flash freeze method for dumplings, wontons, and pot stickers. Chinese families make dumplings in massive batches. Not 12 dumplings. We are talking 200 dumplings in one Saturday afternoon session. The reason they can do this without ending up with a giant frozen blob is the flash freeze technique. You lay your freshly made dumplings out on a sheet pan lined with parchment paper, making sure none of them are touching each other, and you put that tray directly into the freezer for about 90 minutes until they are frozen solid on the outside. Then, and only then, do you transfer them into a bag. Because each dumpling was individually frozen first, they stay completely separate in the bag. You can reach in and grab exactly 5 or exactly 20 without fighting a giant frozen mass. When you cook them from frozen, you do not even thaw them. Straight into a hot pan with oil, add water, cover, steam for 8 minutes. The results are indistinguishable from fresh. Number 14. Freeze aromatics in oil using an ice cube tray. This is one of those techniques that once you understand it, you will wonder how you ever cooked without it. Chinese cooks frequently make what you might call flavor bombs for the freezer. Take minced garlic, minced ginger, sliced green onions, or any combination of aromatics you use constantly. Mix them with a small amount of neutral oil like avocado oil or vegetable oil and pour that mixture into an ice cube tray. Once frozen solid, pop the cubes out and store them in a labeled bag. Each cube is roughly 1 tablespoon of aromatics ready to go. Drop one directly into a hot wok or pan, and your cooking starts immediately with zero prep time. The oil acts as a protective barrier against freezer burn and also carries fat-soluble flavor compounds that you would lose if you froze aromatics without it. This is essentially homemade convenience cooking that rivals anything you can buy at the store. Number 13. Never freeze a whole block of meat. Always portion it first. This sounds almost too obvious, but the execution is what matters. Chinese households do not freeze a 3-pound pork shoulder as one giant chunk. They break it down according to how it will actually be used. Some get sliced thin for quick stir-fries and layered flat in bags so it freezes in separated sheets. Some gets cut into cubes for braising and portioned into single meal amounts. Some gets ground or minced and shaped into rough discs, which thaw much faster than a thick chunk. The key instruction here is to freeze meat flat and thin wherever possible. A thin, flat bag of sliced pork can thaw in cold water in under 15 minutes. A frozen block of the same meat takes hours. Label every single bag with the cut, the weight, and the date. Chinese home cooks often write the intended dish right on the label. Sliced pork for mapo, beef cubes for stew. That clarity eliminates the freezer mystery meat problem entirely. Number 12. The blanch before freeze rule for vegetables. Chinese cooking uses an enormous variety of vegetables, and Chinese home cooks know that not all vegetables freeze well raw. Leafy greens like Chinese broccoli, bok choy, and spinach will turn into a watery, cell-destroyed mess if you freeze them without blanching first. The technique is simple. Bring a large pot of salted water to a full boil. Drop your vegetables in for 60 to 90 seconds, no more. Immediately transfer them to an ice water bath to stop the cooking completely. Then you drain them, dry them as thoroughly as possible, and freeze them spread out on a sheet pan before bagging. What blanching does is deactivate the enzymes in vegetables that cause them to degrade. Without blanching, those enzymes keep working even at freezing temperatures, slowly breaking down color, texture, and nutrients. Blanched and frozen bok choy added to a quick noodle soup from frozen is genuinely delicious. Unblanched frozen bok choy is a sad, olive-green puddle. Number 11. Freeze cooked rice in specific portion sizes. This might be the most American applicable habit on this entire list because Americans throw away enormous amounts of cooked rice. Chinese families essentially never throw away cooked rice, partly because of fried rice culture, but also because of this specific freezing method. Let your cooked rice cool completely, then spread it loosely on a sheet pan and let it air dry for about 20 minutes. This removes surface moisture that would otherwise create ice crystals and make your rice gummy when reheated. Then portion it into individual or family-sized portions in small freezer bags, pressing each bag flat. When you reheat frozen rice, sprinkle a teaspoon of water over the top before microwaving and cover it loosely. The steam created by that tiny bit of water is what restores the rice to a fluffy, separated texture rather than a hard, dried-out brick. Frozen rice also makes significantly better fried rice than fresh rice because the moisture balance is perfect. Number 10. Use the Chinese habit of freezing stock in graduated volumes. Chinese cooking relies heavily on stock. Not the canned sodium bomb stuff, but real stock made from bones, aromatics, and thyme. The problem most people have is that they make a big pot of stock and freeze it all in 1 or 2 giant containers, which means every time they need a splash of stock for a sauce or a cup for braising, they have to thaw a massive block. Chinese cooks freeze stock in at least 3 different sizes. Small ice cube trays for 2 tablespoon quantities, standard muffin tins lined with plastic wrap for half-cup quantities, and quart-sized bags laid flat for large volume needs. This graduated system means you can grab exactly what a recipe needs without waste or waiting. Make a big batch of pork bone stock or chicken stock on a Sunday. Strain it, let it cool, and fill all 3 formats. Your freezer becomes a stock library that serves every cooking need for months. Number 9. The Chinese technique of pre-seasoning before freezing. Here is something that surprises a lot of people. Chinese cooks frequently marinate and season proteins before freezing rather than after thawing. A batch of chicken thighs might get coated in a mixture of soy sauce, Shaoxing wine, a bit of sesame oil, white pepper, and cornstarch before going into the freezer in portion bags. When you thaw this chicken, it has been marinating for however long it was frozen, which means the flavor penetration is extraordinary. The cornstarch in the marinade is particularly clever because it acts as a buffer that helps protect the meat texture during freezing and also sets up a perfect coating for searing or stir-frying when cooked. You go from frozen marinated chicken to a restaurant-quality dish in the time it takes to thaw and heat a pan. Pre-seasoned pork belly slices, beef for stir-fry, even shrimp. This technique collapses meal prep time dramatically. Now I want to pause for just a second here. If you are enjoying these techniques and you want the full depth of Chinese cooking knowledge, everything from knife skills to wok techniques to sauce ratios to restaurant secrets that took me years to compile, I put all of it into one resource called the Complete Chinese Kitchen Bible. It contains over 900 clever cooking tricks, techniques, and restaurant secrets. Basically, everything we cover on this channel, finally organized in one comprehensive place. There is a link in the description, and I will mention it again at the end. Now back to the list because we are getting into some serious game changers. Number 8. Freeze herbs and aromatics in specific Chinese flavor profiles. Rather than freezing individual herbs, Chinese home cooks often freeze pre-made flavor-based blends that correspond to specific regional dishes. A Sichuan flavor base might be a mixture of dubanjiang, minced garlic, ginger, and dried chili oil frozen into cubes. A Cantonese steam base might be sliced ginger, green onion, and a splash of rice wine frozen together. A master stock reduction frozen in small portions ready to be reconstituted. The idea is that when you are tired after work and you want to make a quick dish, you are not building a flavor profile from scratch. You are pulling out a cube that already contains everything you need for that specific regional taste. This is the Chinese equivalent of a stock cube, except it actually tastes like real food because you made it yourself from quality ingredients. Create a batch of these flavor bombs once a month and weeknight cooking becomes almost effortless. Number 7. The anti-freezer burn wrapping method. Freezer burn is the enemy, and it happens when air comes into contact with frozen food and causes dehydration on the surface. American households often rely on just one layer of protection, a Ziploc bag. Chinese households, particularly those that learn food preservation out of necessity, use a layered wrapping system. For meats that will be stored longer than a month, the food gets wrapped first in plastic wrap very tightly, pressing out all air, and then that wrap package goes inside a Ziploc bag from which you also press out as much air as possible. For liquid-containing items like marinated meats, you can use the water displacement method where you submerge the bag almost completely in water with just the zipper above the surface, which forces out nearly all the air before sealing. These two steps together create a near-vacuum environment that prevents freezer burn for 3 to 4 times longer than a single bag alone. Number 6. Freeze dim sum components separately, not as assembled dishes. This is a nuanced but incredibly useful habit. When Chinese families make dim sum at home, whether that is hargao, shumai, turnip cake, or sticky rice, they tend to freeze components separately rather than fully assembled dishes whenever possible. Uncooked dumpling wrappers freeze beautifully when separated with small squares of parchment paper and stacked. Filling for dumplings freezes well on its own. Sticky rice cooked and portioned freezes well. This component freezing approach gives you much more flexibility than freezing whole assembled dishes. You can pull out just wrappers on a night you want to make dumplings with fresh filling, or pull out just filling when you have fresh wrappers. It also generally preserves texture better because each component can be stored in its optimal format. This is modular cooking applied to your freezer, and it is incredibly efficient. Number 5. Use the Chinese practice of freezing sauce bases in bulk. This is different from the flavor cube technique in number 8. This is about larger quantities of finished sauce that would be used as a base for an entire dish. Red braising liquid, The Master Soy Sauce Braising Liquid that flavors red braised pork belly or soy sauce chicken is one of the most powerful things you can have in your freezer. This sauce gets better every time you use it and top it up, and Chinese families who keep Master stock sometimes have versions that are decades old. Freeze it in amounts that correspond to full dish portions. The same applies to a good black bean sauce base, a hoisin-based barbecue glaze, or a general TSO-style sauce reduced and concentrated. When you freeze these concentrated bases, thaw them, and add fresh aromatics to brighten them up, you get restaurant-quality results in minutes. Your freezer is not just for raw ingredients. It is a flavor library. Number 4. The Chinese principle of knowing your freezer zones. Not all areas of your freezer are equally cold. The back is colder and more stable. The door is warmest and experiences the most temperature fluctuation. The top shelf is generally more stable than the bottom in an upright freezer. Chinese home cooks, particularly older generations who learn to be incredibly precise about food preservation, use their freezer real estate deliberately. Items with longer storage needs, bones for stock, large meat portions, dumplings that were made in big batches, go in the back of the lowest shelf where temperatures are most consistent. Items you will use within 2 to 3 weeks go closer to the front. Flavor cubes and small portions go in designated spots you check first. Ice cream and things that can survive minor temperature variation go in the door. This is not just organization for the sake of organization. It is a system that protects the quality of your food and ensures nothing gets lost and forgotten until it has been in there so long it becomes unrecognizable. Number 3. Pre-cook and freeze protein specifically for quick noodle dishes. Chinese noodle culture is essentially built around the concept of fast assembly from pre-prepared components. In a traditional Chinese household, the freezer will often contain portions of pre-cooked sliced char siu pork, blanched and chilled beef slices, or poached and chilled chicken breast, all vacuum sealed or tightly wrapped. These proteins were cooked specifically to be served cold or quickly rewarmed in a bowl of soup noodles. Here is how to apply this. Cook a batch of char siu in your oven. Let it cool completely. Slice it, portion it, and freeze it flat. When you want noodles, you boil your noodles. Pour over hot stock from your frozen stock library, and lay a few slices of char siu on top that you reheated quickly in the microwave or dropped into the hot broth. This is restaurant-quality bowl of noodles in less than 10 minutes on a Tuesday night from things you made on Sunday. This is the system. Number 2. The Chinese freezer inventory habit. This is not a food technique. This is a systems technique, and it might be the most impactful thing on this entire list. Chinese home cooks who are excellent at eliminating food waste almost universally practice some form of freezer inventory. In traditional households, this was a handwritten list on a piece of paper taped to the freezer door. In modern households, it might be a notes app or a simple spreadsheet. The list has 3 columns: what it is, when it was frozen, and what dish it is intended for. Every time something goes into the freezer, the list gets updated. Every time something comes out, it gets crossed off. This sounds tedious, but it takes about 30 seconds, and it eliminates the phenomenon of discovering frozen food that is over a year old and completely unidentifiable. More importantly, it helps you plan meals around what you already have rather than shopping for ingredients, while perfectly good food sits frozen and forgotten. The Chinese philosophy here is that a freezer without a system is just a delay before the trash. Number 1. The master technique of deliberate batch cooking for the freezer. Every other technique on this list supports this one. The number 1 freezer habit in Chinese households is intentional. Deliberate batch cooking with the freezer as the destination, not as an afterthought. American cooking culture tends to cook for tonight and put leftovers away. Chinese cooking culture, particularly in households feeding multiple generations or dealing with food insecurity, tends to cook for the week or the month, with specific portions designated for the freezer before the meal even starts. When you make dumplings, you make 200 and freeze 150. When you make red braised pork, you make a double batch and freeze half in portion containers. When you roast a pork shoulder, you portion it immediately and freeze what will not be used in the next 2 days.
The freezer is not where food goes to be forgotten. It is where food goes to be protected and deployed strategically. This mindset shift is the foundation of everything. It is what separates a household that wastes $2,000 a year from one that wastes almost nothing. And if you want to go even deeper into the full philosophy of Chinese cooking, not just the freezer habits, but the wok techniques, the sauce ratios, the preparation methods, the regional flavors, the knife skills, the restaurant secrets that most cookbooks never explain clearly, everything we cover on this channel is now organized and consolidated into the complete Chinese Kitchen Bible. Over 900 cooking tricks, techniques, and secrets in one place. It took a long time to put together, and it is genuinely the most comprehensive Chinese cooking resource I know of for home cooks who want to cook with real confidence. The link is in the description below. Now go reorganize your freezer, write that inventory list, and the next time you are tempted to throw something away, ask yourself what a Chinese grandmother would do with it first. Subscribe and hit the bell, because next week we are going into the pantry, and there are just as many game-changing habits hiding in there.